Meet the NZXT H700i, and isn't it beautiful? The H700i we have here is in a way a successor to the H440, which was a previous large mid-tower case from NZXT. You can still buy it, by the way. Kind of looked like a mini fridge. I didn't really like that design very much. This design, though, much better in my opinion, save a few details that I would personally change the next time around. We're going to talk about all of the very cool, unique features about this case, especially the cable management at the rear. We'll go really in depth with that. And then we'll also follow this video up with a build in this case. We're going to put a white motherboard in here and try to make this case just look as cohesive as possible. It already looks beautiful without anything in it. I can't wait to throw in components that follow suit with the color scheme. Let's start with the dimensions first. This is an H series case, like I said, so it's going to be a bit larger in total volume than, say, the S340 Elite, which I'll be comparing this case to quite a bit. This is about 23 centimeters wide, just over 50 centimeters tall, and about 50 centimeters deep. It's constructed from steel and tempered glass at the front and weighs just over 12 kilograms. All right, anything else really important on here that we want to talk about? No, not really. It's got the usual H series fan and radiator config, so you can fit up to 3 120mm fans up top along with radiators. There is space for that. You also get a removable tray up top, which is pretty cool as well. And then at the front, you can fit this same config up to 3 120mm fans or radiators, and there is a large space in the basement that does span across the entire length of the case for extra room. If you want to put a radiator there, maybe even a pump down below and have those tubes run up if you're doing something like a hardline tubing build, then this case is definitely suited for that. There is a problem though with the cable shroud. I'll talk about that later. I'm not really a fan of this. I think it's a little too ostentatious and can get in the way of some very precious pipe routing. You can fit up to 7 SSDs in here, which I think is pretty cool. 3 of which will be situated on the front of the case somewhere. They'll be exposed to the room because 2 of those are on top of the basement and 1 is in front of the basement. This is a similar config to the S340 Elite, but the improvement here with the H700i is that the top 2 SSD trays are modular in the sense that you can move them pretty much anywhere you want along these grooves atop the basement. Just grip the lever on the right side of each and you can, well, do whatever you want here. Move them further towards the back of the case, or you can move them further forward. You can even rotate them sideways if you want, get really fancy with it. Although just from a cable management standpoint, keeping them roughly where they are is the smartest way to go. There's also a hard drive shelf down below which you can slide forward and back depending on how big your power supply is and how much room you need in the front for cables, radiators, and reservoirs. If we want to talk about what else you get with the case, there are 3 included 120mm AER fans from NZXT in the front, and there is 1 140mm AER fan situated at the rear, but these are pretty cheap just at first glance. There's no rubber grooves anywhere to mitigate the sound, so vibrations won't really be helped in any sense here. And I'm really disappointed that despite this case having integrated like an integrated RGB strip up top, which I think is really cool, you don't get the RGB fans, the RGB AER fans from NZXT with this case. Not that they would, do much at the front because the front panel is not transparent at all, but having one at the rear maybe would be a nice touch, just something to make it feel premium. This is a $200 case, and getting some cheap fans in this case is really disappointing. I would like to have seen something nicer than what we're getting with these fans here. Despite the cheap fans though, this case doesn't look too bad from an airflow perspective. It has about 1 inch of clearance between the front panel, which is not perforated, and the chassis and where the fans are mounted. So decent space for air to move in, but again, laterally. So we're not talking about airflow moving directly in from the front, which is always going to impede your cooler or your fan's ability to pull in air. Also on top of that, this is going to be a louder case because the air does have to make such a sharp turn to enter the large space inside. There is a large dust filter up front that spans all 3 fan slots. It's magnetically attached as well to the chassis, which is nice. And there's a second dust filter underneath the case protecting the power supply. There is no dust filter included at the top of the case, and these little holes on the side aren't going to do a great job at mitigating dust buildup. So only run an exhaust config at the top of the case. Don't pull air in from the top because it really makes no sense anyway, right? Heat rises. So run an intake setup here at the front, exhaust setup on the top, and a single exhaust fan at the rear, and you should be fine. The slightly negative pressure buildup you'll have in the case should be protected by the dust filter up front. The H700i does have some subtleties that I would like to point out, however, one of which is included in the front I/O config. So there are two USB 2.0 ports, two USB 3.0 ports, the standard, microphone, headphone jack, the power button, and these are attached to the chassis, by the way, so you can remove the entire top panel, not have to worry about dealing with cables attached to the case and this front I/O. But the USB 3.0 hubs are actually painted purple instead of the typical blue color, which is nice. I mean, that's NZXT's color scheme anyway, what purple, white, and black. So it's really nice to see that in this case. Just a small thing, a small detail that they did not miss. Also, there is a cutout on top of the PSU shroud for routing your VGA power cables. So that if you're worried about that, it is still there. I'm glad that they included that. In most cases nowadays are overlooking that, but this is something that I'm glad to see still existing in NZXT cases. Another cool feature, they've included a smart device, which is what they're calling it, but it's basically a fan hub slash RGB strip hub. It's basically everything all in one. It's included with the purchase of the case. It better be for $200, and it all can be controlled via CAM software and a USB 2.0 connection to the motherboard. So you can control fans with this thing, you can control the colors of RGB strips and RGB fans with this as long as they're compatible, and you can look all that up on their website. Then it can all be controlled via CAM software, which is really cool. It's all integrated, it is included with the case. Again, like I said, it better be for $200 or so, but it's already mounted actually to the front of the case, and they've done a great job blending it in with the rest of the design. So they're just kind of showing it off in the front, which I think is really cool. Now on to the one thing that's really bugging me about this case, and it's pretty obvious, it might not be obvious that it's bugging you, but it's bugging me a lot, and it's this stupid cable shroud. Like, I get that there's some functionality to it, like blocking the cables, making it more difficult to connect your 24 pin to your motherboard. I'm sorry, I'm really railing it here, but I think this thing is just stupid, and they made it worse by making it more prominent in the H700i, also the smaller variants of this case, which are also linked in the description. I get what they're trying to do here, I really do, but it's just gonna get in the way. I think that it is just a showpiece. It's just like the icon of NZXT cases at this point. They've made it more defined. It wraps around the entire front side of the case, and it's just a nuisance. It's a pain to work around. It's a pain to run cables through. I really think that they need to subdue this somehow. Keep some sort of design quality that makes an NZXT case look like an NZXT case, sure, but don't impede my own building ability to make this thing look the way you want it. It's really the only major concern I have about this case, that and maybe airflow. We'll run some tests, but the shroud is just, I really just see it as a showpiece. It sticks down, like I would say probably 3 or so inches, and it's just, I don't know what it's doing here. Like, what is it doing here? Some people like this design more, some people like the design of the S340 Elite more. I would lean more towards that design from just I don't know, a theme standpoint, but the functionality of the H700i does trump the functionality of the S340 Elite. They've done a lot more here at the front. They've done a lot more also at the rear of the case, on the right side of the case, which I want to talk about next. There's a lot going on back here, and it's mostly good stuff. So to remove the right panel, all you gotta do is push this button here at the rear. Super easy to do. Just make sure you have a hand there to catch the panel. It will fall once you push that button, and you just click it back into place once you're finished with what you need to do on that side. Very nice. I think all cases should follow this design. I'd like to see a bunch of different things kind of mesh together from multiple companies into one ultimate case. This right here, this quality, I want to see in every case from NZXT from this point out. Now on to some more good stuff. You can see there are a bunch of cable management guides. There's one big one here for the pre-routed cables from the front I/O and from the included hub. You have space for routing 24 pins. You have your 8-pin EPS that you can wrap, do all kinds of crazy stuff with. You have 2 SSD trays that are secured via a single thumb screw, and plenty of tie straps to keep everything else nice and tidy. If you're willing to remove the hard drive bay in the basement, you'll have plenty of space for mounting a D5 modular pump, which you can then use to route piping up to the rest of the components in the case. And there is plenty of space on top of the basement, that little cutout in the front there, for squeezing not only a radiator, a thin radiator at that, but it's still got the space for it, and the tubing necessary to mount a pump down there. That was an issue I had with other cases where like the cutout would only be enough for a fan and radiator config, but the space between that and the end of the cutout where the basement begins on top would be too small to route tubing. So it's nice to see the extra space here. You can put a thicker rad or you can put tubing here instead. So there's nearly an inch of cable management space on this right side, and that's more than enough. Not only that, but you've got the grooves, you've got the tie straps. This should be a breeze to throw any sort of modular, even non-modular power supply in here. You could stuff cables down below, especially if you're willing to remove the hard drive bay, and then the rest of it you can route very cleanly up to the ports on your motherboard and elsewhere. Look, I'm really liking this case. A few things keeping me from just going all in on it, including the price, including the stupid shroud. I'm sorry, I just don't like it. I thought it was interesting looking at first. I was like, oh, well, that's obviously an NZXT case. But then when I started looking at like just how it's integrated and what it's actually supposed to do, I just don't like it. I don't think there's enough space between the motherboard tray and the start of the shroud, so your cables are going to be squished as always. They were that way in the S340 as well. And I just don't like how much space there is between this and the top panel. It just looks weird. That's all. It just looks a little weird to me. And just removing it makes things look so empty in here. So they need to do something, but they don't need to do this. This is the one architectural issue I have with the H700i. Is it enough to prevent me from recommending this case? No, it's not. I still think it's a really nice case. I think it's overpriced, yeah. And you can say, oh, well, they included an RGB strip and a smart hub and blah, 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 whatever, okay? If you want to compare this price to the previous H440 price, it's slightly overpriced for what you're getting. And I think that an S340 Elite will serve the same purpose, basically, with the exception of additional water cooling support. But then again, this is really going to bother you if you're a water cooler. This is like right in the way of everything. If you want to route tubing from your CPU block, maybe to a radiator up top or up front, this stupid thing is just going to get in the way. It's the one issue I have with it, again, and it's the only thing keeping me from just going all in and wanting to build a custom loop in the H700i. So I've got some raw opinions, yeah, but they're just that, they're opinions, and I've been building in several cases throughout the years, and this one it's not the best. It's really not. Considering there's so much space in here to work with, it feels limited by the cable shroud. It just does. What do you think? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see a build in this, be sure to, I don't know, do something. Like the video. That'd be cool. Like the video, or you can just dislike it for whatever reason. Nah, I'm just kidding. I'm going to build in this case anyway. Stay tuned for that. You can find the product description and the info where to buy this thing in the video description. I think as of right now, as of the uploading date and publishing date of this video, you can only buy it on NZXT's website, but it is coming soon to Newegg and Amazon. Stay tuned for those. Those links will be available once you can actually buy this case from those marketplaces. Be sure to click that subscribe button for more content like this. I will catch you in the next video. This is Science Studio. Thanks for learning with us.